There are two types of Korean numbers, the native and Sino-Korean numbers. But this time, we're going to learn about the native Korean numbers. On this video, we're going to study numbers 1 to 10 of the native Korean numbers. Number 1 is hana in native Korean numbers. Again, hana is number 1. This is composed of two syllables. The first syllable is ha, second syllable is na. Pronounce it with me. Hana. How do we spell hana in Hangul? Let's start with the first syllable. To be able to write the syllable ha in Hangul, we need to draw first a Yuk character followed by an a character. For the second syllable na, we need to draw first a Neon character followed by an a character. Number 2. Dul. Dul. This is just composed of one syllable, which is dul. Pronounce it with me. Dul. Dul. How do we spell dul in Hangul? First, we need to draw first a dikat character, followed by an u character, followed by a real character. And then we just have to combine this to form the Hangul of number 2, which is dul. Next is number 3. The native Korean version of number 3 is set. Pronounce it with me. Set. If you would notice, set is spelled with a set character at the third position. But take note that this is pronounced with a T sound. First, we need to draw a set character, followed by an e character, followed by another set character. If you would notice, the ending sound of set is actually a T sound. And if the set character is located on the third position of the syllable, it will have the T sound. Therefore, this is pronounced as set and not ses. And that is number 3, set. Next, the native Korean version of number 4 is net. This is just composed of one syllable. Pronounce it with me. Net. Net. Just like on the case of set, the last siyot character will have the T sound. So it's pronounced as net. How do we spell net in Hangul? First, we need to draw a neon character, followed by an e character, followed by the siyot character. Since siyot is on the third position, it will have the T sound. So this will be pronounced as net instead of nes. Next, the native Korean version of number 5 is dasot. Pronounce it with me. Dasot. This is composed of two syllables. The first syllable is da, the second syllable is sot. Again, it's dasot. How do we spell dasot in Hangul? Let's start with the first syllable. To be able to write the syllable da in Hangul, we need to draw first a dikat character, followed by an a character. For the second syllable sot, we need to draw first a siyot character, followed by an o character, followed by a siyot character. Next, the native Korean version of number 6 is yosot. Again, yosot. This is composed of two syllables. The first syllable is yo, the second syllable is sot. Pronounce it with me. Yosot. Yosot. How do we spell yosot in Hangul? Let's start with the first syllable. To be able to write the syllable yo, we need a placeholder iyang, followed by a yo character. For the second syllable sot, we need to draw first a siyot character, followed by an o character, followed by another siyot character. Next, the native Korean version of number 7 is ilgop. Again, ilgop. This is pronounced as a two-syllable word. The first syllable is il, the second syllable is gop. Pronounce it with me. Ilgop. ilgop. How do we spell ilgop in Hangul? Let's start with the first syllable. To be able to write the syllable il in Hangul, we need to draw first a placeholder iyang, followed by an e character, followed by a real character. For the second syllable gop, we need to draw first a gyuk character, o character, and a biup character. Next, the native Korean version of number 8 is yodol. Again, yodol. The first syllable is yo, the second syllable is dol. Pronounce it with me. Yodol. Yodol. How do we spell yodol in Hangul? Let's start with the first syllable. To be able to write the syllable yo, we need to draw first a placeholder iyang, followed by a yo character. Take note that PH stands for placeholder. The second syllable dol will be written by drawing first a dikit character, followed by an o character, followed by a real character, and lastly, a biup character. Next, the native Korean translation of 9 is ahop. This is pronounced as a two-syllable word. The first syllable is a, second syllable is hop. Pronounce it with me. Ahop. Ahop. How do we spell ahop in Hangul? Let's start with the first syllable. To be able to write the syllable a, we need to draw first a placeholder iyang, followed by an a character. For the second syllable hop, we need to draw first a hiyo character, followed by an o character, followed by a biup character. And the last for this video is number 10. Its native Korean version is yol. This is just composed of one syllable, which is yol. Pronounce it with me. Yol. Yol. How do we write yol in Hangul? Let's start with drawing a placeholder iyang, followed by a yo character, followed by a real character. And then we just have to combine this to form the Hangul of the word, or number 10, which is yol. And with that, you've already learned the native Korean numbers 1 to 10. Next, we'll study the Sino-Korean numbers. On our previous video about native Korean numbers, we were able to learn how to count from 1 to 9. And on this video, we'll be knowing how to form numbers higher than 10 for native Korean numbers. Are you ready? Let's start. Initially, we were able to learn the increments of 1 for native Korean numbers. So we've learned about hana, dul, set, net, tasot, yosot, ilgop, yodol, ahop. And that is 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. But how are we going to count from 11 onwards? To be able to count from numbers 11 to 19, we need to remember yol. Yol is actually the unique name for number 10. And we will also be using this to count from 11 to 19. So, it's going to be yol plus number 1 to 9. And the formula is yol plus any number from 1 to 9. So that's hanadol, setnet, dasot, yosot, etc. So that would be yol hana, yol tol, yol set, yol net, yol dasot, yol yosot, yol ahop, etc. Next, to be able to count from 21 to 29, we would need to remember this term, which is sumul. Sumul is the unique name for number 20. So just like what's done for yol, we'll be using this to form numbers 21 to 29. So the formula is actually sumul plus any number from 1 to 9. So any number from hanadol, setnet, dasot, yosot, ilgop, etc. So the numbers would result to sumul hana, sumul tul, sumul set. So we'll have a drill of these numbers later on. Next, to be able to count from 31 to 39, we need to remember So-run. So-run is the unique name for number 30. And just like that of Yul and Sumul, we'll be using this to form numbers 31 to 39. So how are we going to use this to form numbers 31 to 39? We just need to follow this formula. So-run plus any number from 1 to 9. Any number would mean hana, dul, set, net, tasat, until ahop. So, numbers 30 to 39 would sound like Serin hana, serin dul, serin set, etc. Next, to be able to count from 41 to 49, we need to remember Mahun. Mahun is the unique name for number 40, and we'll be using this to form numbers from 41 to 49. So how exactly are we going to form numbers with Mahun? We just have to follow the formula, Mahun plus any number from 1 to 9. So for example, the number we chose from 1 to 9 is Hana. So, that is 1. So 41 would sound like Mahun Hana. Since Mahun is 40 and 1 is Hana. Next, to be able to count from 51 to 59, we need to remember Swin. Swin is the unique name for number 50, and we'll be using this to count from 51 to 59. So, how exactly are we going to create numbers 51 to 59 from Swin? We just have to use this formula. So, Swin plus any number from 1 to 9. For example, that any number that we chose is number 2, and that would be dul. So, Swin dul is actually 50 plus 2, and that is 52. So, Swin dul. Next, to be able to count from 61 to 69, we need to remember Yesun. Yesun is the unique name for number 60. And we'll be using this to form numbers from 61 to 69. So, how exactly are we going to form numbers with Yesun? We just have to use this formula, Yesun plus any number from 1 to 9. For example, the number we chose is number 3, which is set. So, if we wanted to say 63, 60 is Yesun and 3 is set, we will be saying Yesun set. Next, for you to be able to count from 71 to 79, you would need to remember Iren. Iren is the unique name for number 70. And we will just have to add this to numbers 1 to 9, Hanadal set net, to form numbers 71 to 79. So how exactly is it done? Let's just follow this formula. Iren plus any number from 1 to 9. So, for example, we chose Hana and we added to Iren. So, Iren Hana is actually 71. So that is how we count from 70 to 79. Next, to be able to count from 81 to 89, we need to remember Yodun. Yodun is the unique name for 80. And so, we'll be adding this to the other terms to form numbers from 81 to 89. So how exactly is it done? We just have to follow this formula. So Yodun plus any number from 1 to 9. For example, we chose number 2 again, which is Dul. So Yodun plus Dul is just 82. So Yodun is 80, Dul is 2. So 82 is Yodun Dul. Lastly, if you wanted to count from 91 to 99, you need to remember Ahun. Ahun is the unique name for number 90. And this is what we would need to add to Hanatul, Setnet, etc. to form numbers from 91 to 99. As usual, we just have to follow the formula, Ahun plus any number from 1 to 9. So, for example, we chose number 9, which is Ahop. So, 99 is actually pronounced as Ahun Ahop. And that is how similarly you will count number 90 to 99. So, what's next after 99? If the value is greater than 99, native Korean is not applicable anymore, and therefore, we will use the Sino-Korean numbers. Have you watched our video about Sino-Korean numbers yet? Not? Check it out. But from that video, we already know that the unique name for number 100 is Baek. Therefore, we can only use native Korean numbers for numbers 99 and below. For numbers 100 above, we need to resort to Sino-Korean numbers. Going back to the native Korean numbers, let's have a drill of native Korean numbers 10 to 19. Again, the formula that we have to follow is just YOL plus any number from 1 to 9. So that any number from 1 to 9 would be 하나, 둘, 셋, 넷, 다섯, 여섯, etc. Let's run through it. First, the native Korean translation of 11 is YOL 하나. YOL is number 10 and 하나 is 1. So, it's the same as saying 10 plus 1 equals 11. And that is why YOL 하나 is 11. Next, the native Korean version of 12 is YOL 둘. YOL represents the 10th place, which is 10, plus the 1st place, which is 2. So, YOL is 10, 둘 is 2, and that is 10 plus 2, 12. Next is number 13. The native Korean version of this is YOL 셋. YOL is 10 and 셋 is 3. 10 plus 3 is 13. And that is why YOL 셋 is 13. Next is 14. The native Korean translation of this is YOL 넷. YOL is 10, net is 4. So, if we combine it, it becomes 14. And that is why YOL net is 14. Next is 15. The native Korean translation of this is YOL 다섯. YOL is 10, 다섯 is 5. 10 plus 5 is 15. And that is why YOL 다섯 is equal to 15. Next is this one. The native Korean translation of 16 is YOL 여섯. YOL is 10, 여섯 is 6. So 10 plus 6 is 16. And that is why YOL 여섯 is 16. Next, the native Korean translation of 17 is YOL 일곱. YOL is equal to 10 and 일곱 is equal to 7. 10 plus 7 is 17. That is why YOL 일곱 is 17. Next is 18. The native Korean translation of this is YOL 여덟. YOL is 10, 여덟 is 8. So 10 plus 8 is 18. And that is why YOL 여덟 is the term for 18. Next is 19. The native Korean translation of this is YOL 아홉. YOL is 10, 아홉 is 9. 10 plus 9 is 19. That is why YOL 아홉 is the native Korean pronunciation of 19. And with all this long explanation, we were able to learn how to form numbers, specifically native Korean numbers, that are higher than 10. If you want to complete your knowledge on Korean numbers, check our videos about Sino-Korean numbers. Thank you! There are two types of Korean numbers: the Sino-Korean numbers and the native Korean numbers. And on this video, we're going to study about the Sino-Korean numbers. On this video, specifically, we're going to tackle numbers 1 to 10 of Sino-Korean numbers. First, the Sino-Korean version of number 1 is il. This is just composed of one syllable, which is il. Pronounce it with me. il, il. How do we spell il in Hangul? First, we need to draw a placeholder iyon character, followed by an e character, followed by a real character. And then, we just have to combine all this to form the Hangul of the word il. Next, the Sino-Korean version of number 2 is e. If you would notice, you just have to remove the real from number 1, which is il, to make it e. Pronounce this with me. E. How do we spell e in Hangul? It's very simple. We need to draw a placeholder iyang and an e character. As mentioned, you just have to remove the real character from number 1, which is il, to make it number 2, which is e. Next, the Sino-Korean version of number 3 is sam. This is just composed of one syllable. Pronounce it with me. Sam. Again, sam. How do we spell sam in Hangul? First, we need to draw a siyut character, and then we need to draw an a character, and lastly, we need to add a miyam character. And then we just have to combine all these three to form the Hangul of the word sam, which is number 3. Next, the Sino-Korean version of number 4 is sa. If you would notice, you just have to remove the miyam character from number 3, which is sam, to make it number 4, which is sa. Pronounce this with me. Sa. How do we spell sa in Hangul? It's very simple. We need to draw a siyut character and an a character. Again, as mentioned, you just have to omit the miyam character of number 3, which is sam, to make it number 4, which is sa. Next, the Sino-Korean version of number 5 is simply o. Again, it's o. This is just composed of one syllable, and this is very easy to remember. Pronounce this again. O. How do we spell it in Hangul? It's very straightforward. We need an o character, and we just have to add a placeholder iyang to make it a syllable. Again, we have to draw an iyang character, which serves as a placeholder, and an o character. Next, the Sino-Korean version of number 6 is Yuk. Again, it's Yuk. Just like numbers 1 to 5 of the Sino-Korean numbers, this is just composed of one syllable. Pronounce it with me. Yuk. Yuk. How do we spell Yuk in Hangul? Let's start with drawing a placeholder iyong, followed by the yu character, followed by a gyuk character. And then we just have to combine all these three to form the Hangul of the word yuk, which is number 6. Next, the Sino-Korean version of number 7 is chil. Again, it's chil. This is just composed of 3 Hangul characters and of just one syllable. Pronounce it with me. Chil. Chil. How do we spell it in Hangul? Let's start by drawing a chiyut character, followed by an e character, followed by a real character. And then we just have to combine this to form the Hangul of the word chil, which is number 7. Next, the Sino-Korean version of number 8 is pal. Again, it's pal. From number 1 up to this number, we have noticed that they're just composed of one syllable. Pronounce this again with me. Pal. How do we spell pal in Hangul? This is just composed of 3 Hangul characters. The first one is a P character, the second one is an A character, and the third one is a real character. And then we just have to combine this and arrange this to form the Hangul of the word pal, which is number 8. Next, the Sino-Korean version of number 9 is gu. Again, it's gu. This is composed of just 1 syllable. Pronounce this again with me. Gu. Gu. How do we spell gu in Hangul? It's very simple. We only needed 2 Hangul characters. The first one is a Gya character, followed by an U character. And then we just have to arrange and combine it to form the Hangul of the word gu, which is number 9 of the Sino-Korean numbers. And the last one for this video is number 10. The Sino-Korean version of number 10 is ship. And we should take note that numbers 1 to 10 is just composed of 1 syllable. Pronounce this again with me. Ship. Ship. How do we spell ship in Hangul? We only needed 3 Hangul characters. The first one is a Siyut character, followed by an E character, and lastly, a B character. And then we just have to combine and arrange this to form the Hangul of the word ship, which is number 10 in Sino-Korean. And with that, you've just learned the Sino-Korean numbers 1 to 10. To complement your knowledge on Korean numbers, you may check the other video about native Korean numbers. Thank you for listening. On our previous video about the Sino-Korean numbers, we were able to learn and memorize numbers 1 to 10. And on this video, which is the part 2 of the first one, we'll be forming numbers higher than 10. Let's start. This is just a quick review of the numbers discussed on the first video. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. And this is equivalent to numbers 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. This is easy to remember because this is just an increment of 1. What I mean is that number 2 is just 1 unit away from number 1. Number 3 is also 1 unit away from number 2. So the difference of 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 is just 1 unit from each other. So by convention, let's call these numbers as increments of ones, or the ones placed when it comes to mathematics. This convention would be very useful on the following parts of this video. If we have increments of 1, we also have increments of 10. If you would remember, ship is the Sino-Korean version of number 10. But for Sino-Korean numbers that are higher than 10, we also use ship to indicate an increment of 10. This is similar to the tens place of mathematics. Take, for example, number 12. The Sino-Korean version of number 12 is ship E. Ship means 10 and E means 2. Take note that the principle is ship plus E. So 10 plus 2, it's 12. This also applies to other numbers from 1 to 9. Ship Il, ship E, ship Sam, ship Sa, and so on. Another brief example that we can take is number 30. Take note that ship is on the second position. So it's like Sam, which is 3, times ship, which is 10. So 10 times 3 equals 30. This will also apply to the other numbers if it is positioned before ship. So there is also il ship, e ship, sa ship, and so on. We'll have more examples on this later on this video. If we have increments of 1 and 10, we also have increments of 100 for Sino-Korean. And we call it baek. Baek equals 100. And this can also be used as increments of 100 for numbers higher than 100, such as 200, 300, or 400. In mathematics, this is called the hundreds place. For example, number 400. We know that sa is number 4 and bek is 100. So sa times bek, which means 4 times 100, is equal to 400. This also works to other numbers from 1 to 9. Another example would be 105. We know that bek is 100 and o is 5. So it's like 100 plus 5 is 105. Again, we'll have more examples of this further in this video. If we have increments of 1, 10, and 100, we also have an increment of 1,000. If we are dealing with numbers equal or higher than 1,000, we'll be adding chon. In mathematics, this is equivalent to the thousands place. So far, the intention of this video is to introduce the increments that will be useful for counting numbers higher than 9. So the increments of 10 is called ship, increments of 100 is called bek, increments of 1,000 is chon, increment of 10,000 is man. Now let us apply these increments into examples. For numbers 10 up to 99, we'll be using this formula. So we have the value equals multiplier times increment of 10 plus the increment of 1. As mentioned, this is only used for values 10 up to 99. Take note that this doesn't involve an increment of 100 since the last number is 99. For this case, we'll only need the increment of 10, which is ship. So on this formula, we are basically dividing the number into two parts. The first part is the tens place, and the second part is the ones place. Just like how we do it in math. Take, for example, number 29. We know that this is composed of 20 and 9. 2 is the tens place, and 9 is the ones place. We know that 20 can be formed by multiplying 10 by 2. So, the first part, which is 2 times 10, or the tens place, is actually translated into Sino-Korean as E ship. Why is it E ship? The Korean translation of 2 in Sino-Korean numbers is E. And the Korean translation of number 10 or increment of 10 in Sino-Korean is ship. So when we say E ship, it's the same as saying 2 sets of 10. And then the second part is very simple. We already know and we already memorized number 1 to 9 of Sino-Korean numbers. So the Sino-Korean version of number 9 is just gu. And then we'll just add it to the first part, which is E ship. If you could check, we are able to follow the formula. So for you to transform a number into its Sino-Korean pronunciation or spelling, you would need to follow the formula. Now that we were able to explain how to count from 10 to 99, let's proceed with the values 100 up to 999. So aside from increments of 1 and increments of 10, numbers from 100 up to 999 also involves increments of 100. And therefore, we'll be using bek. So the formula that we should follow is this. Value equals multiplier times increment of 100 plus multiplier times increment of 10 plus the increment of 1. Take note that for this given formula and for the previous formula given, multiplier is just equal to 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, or 9, or the increments of 1. As compared to the previous formula, the only difference is that we added the cluster that has the formula for the increment of 100. So let's try to apply this formula by looking into this example. So the value is 567. And so this could be divided into 3 parts. The part with increment of 100 or the 100 place, the part with the increments of 10 or the tens place, and the increment of 1. Let's start with the increment of 100. So 5 times 100 equals 500. So 5 is O and bek is 100. So when we say O bek, it's the same as saying 5 sets of 100. So again, 5 is O and 100 is Bek or increment of 100. So when we say O Bek, it's the same as saying 500 or 5 sets of 100. So that's it for the increment of 100, which is the first part. Now let's proceed to the second part of this example, which is the increment of 10 or the tens place. So to make 60, we have to multiply 10 by 6. And 6 in Sino-Korean is Yuk. And the increment of 10 is Ship. So 60 or 6 times 10 is actually pronounced as Yuk Ship. So when we say Yuk Ship, it's the same as saying 6 sets of 10. And then the last part of this example is the increment of 1, which is number 7. And we already know that the Sino-Korean version of number 7 is Chil. So if we combine 560 and 7, it will result to a Sino-Korean number which is read as Obek Yukship Chil. So 567 is actually read as Obek Yukship Chil. Now let's proceed with knowing how to write the Sino-Korean numbers for values 1,000 up to 9,999. So if you will compare this formula with the previous formula, the only difference is that there is an additional element that shows how to indicate the thousands place. So there is a multiplier times increment of 100 portion on the first part. So let me state the whole formula first. The value is equal to multiplier times increment of 1,000 plus multiplier times increment of 100 plus multiplier times increment of 10 plus increment of 1. Since the value is 1,000 up to 9,999, it does not only involve increments of 100, increments of 10, or increments of 1. Instead, it has 4 increments involved. Aside from increments of 100, 10, and 1, we'll be also using the increment of 1,000. And we know that that is ton. So aside from Bek and Ship, we'll be also using ton. So let's try to apply this formula with the given example. So the number is 8,234. So this number could be subdivided into 4 parts. The thousands place, which is 8 times 1,000. The hundreds place, which is 2 times 100. The tens place, which is 3 times 10. And the ones place. So let's explain first the thousands place, which is 8 times 1,000 or 8,000. So we know that the Sino-Korean version of 8 is ship. And the Sino-Korean term for an increment of 1,000 or 1,000 itself is chon. So when we say sip chon, it's the same as saying 8,000 or 8 sets of 1,000. So the ship part or number 8 is just a multiplier, so it can be changed into the other numbers from 1 to 9. So we can use il, I, samsa, and so on. The next part is the hundreds place, and we already applied this from the previous parts of this video. So, ibek is actually the same as saying 200 or 2 sets of 100. Number 2 is I in Sino-Korean, and 100 is bek in Sino-Korean. So, again, ibek is the same as 200. The third part is the tens place, and that is sam ship. Sam is number 3 and ship is number 10. So when we say sam ship, it's the same as saying 30 or 3 sets of 10. And the last part would be the ones place, which is 4, which you already know as sa. So 8,234 is actually pronounced in Sino-Korean as sipchon, ibek, samship, sa. Sipchon is the thousands place or the 8,000 part, Ibek is the hundreds place, which corresponds to 200. Samship is the tens place, which corresponds to 30. And Sa is the ones place, which corresponds to 4. So, if we combine all this, we know that the pronunciation of 8,234 is Sipchon, Ibek, Samship, Sa. And with that, we already know how to count up to 9,999. Just a reminder, if the multiplier on the formula is 1, then there's no need to mention it anymore. For example, number 10. Although this could be described as one set of 10, some people would be tempted to call it il ship. So il is 1 and ship is 10. So that's one set of 10. But as mentioned, if the multiplier is just 1, then there's no need to mention it. So instead of il ship, we'll be saying ship. So it's the same as 100. It should be bek instead of il bek. And lastly, for 1,000, it should be chon, not il chon. But again, if the multiplier is not 1, then you'll need to mention that multiplier itself. More example. So if we have 12, it's ship e, not il ship e. Since the tens place is just multiplied to 1, we won't have to pronounce the il part anymore. So 12 is just ship e. Next is 102. This is just pronounced as bek e and not il bek e. Last example is 1,222. So this is pronounced as chon e bek e ship e and not il chon e bek e ship e. Again, if the multiplier is 1, there's no need to mention it. So right now, let's have a drill of Sino-Korean numbers 11 to 20. So we just have to follow the formula, ship plus any number from 1 to 9. So, that would be il, I, samsa, o, yuk, chil, palga, sip. So let's have a run through of it right now. The Sino-Korean version of number 11 is ship, il. Ship is 10 and il is 1. So 10 plus 1 is 11. So ship il is 11. The Sino-Korean translation of number 12 is ship e. So ship corresponds to the tens place of the number and e corresponds to the ones place of the number. So the tens place is just 10 and the ones place value is just 2. So 10 plus 2 is 12. So 12 is ship e. The Sino-Korean translation of number 13 is ship sam. Ship represents the tens value, which is 10, and sam represents the ones place value, which is 3. So 10 plus 3 is 13, and that is ship sam. Next, the Sino-Korean translation of 14 is ship sa. Ship represents the tens value, which is 10, and sa represents the ones value, which is 4. So 10 plus 4 is 14, and that would be ship sa in Sino-Korean. So next, the Sino-Korean translation of number 15 is ship o. Ship represents the tens value, which is 10. O represents the ones value, which is 5. So 10 plus 5 is 15, and that would be ship o. Next is 16. The Sino-Korean translation of 16 is ship yuk. Ship represents the tens value, which is 10, and yuk represents the ones value, which is 6. So 10 plus 6 is 16, and that would be ship yuk in Sino-Korean. Next is 17. The Sino-Korean translation of this is ship chil. Ship represents the tens value, which is 10, and chil represents the ones value, which is 7. So 10 plus 7 is 17, and that would be ship chil in Sino-Korean. Next is number 18. The Sino-Korean translation of this is ship pal. Ship represents the tens value, which is 10, and pal represents the ones place value, which is 8. So 10 plus 8 is 18, and that would be ship pal in Sino-Korean. Next is number 19. The Sino-Korean translation of this is ship gu. Ship represents the tens place value, which is 10, and gu represents the ones place value, which is 9. So 10 plus 9 is 19, and that would be ship gu in Sino-Korean. Next is 20, and the Sino-Korean version of this is I ship. I means 2 and ship means 10. So it's the same as saying 2 sets of 10, and that is equal to 20. Now, let's also have a drill of Sino-Korean numbers by 10. So the following numbers actually follow the formula as stated. Any number from 1 to 9 plus the term ship. Let's go. Number 10. The Sino-Korean translation of this is simply ship. As mentioned, if the multiplier is just 1, then there's no need to mention it. So this can be described as one set of 10, but this should simply be pronounced as ship. Next is number 20. The Sino-Korean translation of this is I ship. I means 2 and ship is 10, so that would be the same as saying 2 sets of 10, and that is equal to 20. So I ship is the Sino-Korean version of 20. Next is 30. And the Sino-Korean translation of this is sam ship. Sam means number 3 and ship means 10. So it's the same as saying 3 sets of 10. So that would be 30. Next is number 40. The Korean translation of this is sa ship. Sa means 4 and ship means 10. So it's the same as saying 4 sets of 10, and that is equal to 40. Therefore, the Sino-Korean translation of 40 is sa ship. Next is number 50. The Sino-Korean translation of this is o ship. O means number 5 and ship is the Korean translation for 10. So, it's the same as saying 5 sets of 10, and that is equal to 50. Next is number 60. The Sino-Korean translation of this is Yuk ship. Yuk means number 6 and ship means number 10. So it's the same as saying 6 sets of 10. And that is equal to 60. Next is number 70. The Sino-Korean translation of this is Chul sip. Chul means 7 and ship means 10. So, this combined would be the same as saying 7 sets of 10, and that is equal to 70. Next is 80. The Sino-Korean translation of this is pal ship. Pal means number 8 and ship means 10. So it's the same as saying 8 sets of 10, and that would be equal to 80. Next is 90. The Sino-Korean translation of this is gu ship. Gu means 9 and ship means 10. And this combined is the same as saying as 9 sets of 10. So 9 times 10 is equal to 90. And with all that long discussion, we were able to learn how to form numbers, specifically Sino-Korean numbers, higher than 10. Please check the same set of lessons for native Korean numbers. Thank you.